awesome to be able to dip in that way. If you miss any part of the show or any part of any of the shows all day long on the KSL Sports Zone, just go to the KSL Sports web page right there. Jump in there, see the podcast episodes there, or just find them wherever you find your podcast. Speaking of joining via video, he's joining us. You can see him on the YouTube page as well. Jonathan Tavernari, former BYU forward and current amazing dude who's joining us every week. And so we appreciate him always dipping in and giving us his thoughts here. JT, thanks for being with us, man.
And now YouTube star. You've heard that one.
You're live. The numbers are going up. They're already just fired. They're firing all the way up here. As we get there we go. I was like waiting because there was a shoulder. I only saw your shoulder. Now we got you. All right, JT. This is off script here, and I'm going to ask you about the Jazz getting Jaren Jackson Jr. I assume you watch some NBA ball. How big of a deal is it to get a guy like that playing in our market, man?
It's huge, and I think that when you look at the way that the Jazz, what the Jazz has been doing, right? And I'll be the first to say, when Trader Danny gave up 3 first-round picks, I was like, wait, what? Did he really? What? Because Danny Ainge usually finesse people for draft picks. He doesn't get finessed. But I look at the way and the roster that he's putting together. It gives me hope that the Jazz next year will be a playoff contender. It gives me hope that the Jazz will be a little bit more competitive than they have been, right? It's been a while since the Jazz has been super exciting and fun to watch, right? And, I look back to the last years with Rudy and Donovan Mitchell, and at least it was super exciting to watch because you knew that they were going to make a run in the playoffs and anything can happen. And it just hasn't been like that, disappointment with the lottery and, some way, somehow dropping to 5th when you have, almost 15% of odds to be able to win the lottery. And so I think it's exciting. And when you look at the core that they're getting together, right, with Keontae, with Ace Bailey, and then Laurie, and then Jaren Jackson, and then Walker Kessler with, Nurkic as a backup. And a lot of the backups that they have, and that's a playoff team. And I think that, Salt Lake is an incredible playoff market. Delta Center has never, been off a top 5 list when it comes to playoff moments. Both of you have covered a lot of playoff games. JJ, I remember back when I was at BYU, a lot was happening with the Jazz. And to be able to be exciting in that environment, I think it's super fun. And, I definitely miss it. So I'm excited about this trade.
Yeah, I think that's the most important, JT, is you have a fan base that's kind of fallen asleep. And when you have to go through a rebuild, a long, painful rebuild, and you're playing 82 games a year and you don't think they're going to win any of them, it's tough to get people excited about it. But this trade gets people excited. It makes this team competitive again. And if you're looking at a lineup where the point guard's 6'4", the shooting guard's 6'8", the 3 is 7 feet, the 4 is 7 feet, and the 5 is 7 feet. I mean, you, as a player, JT, you're looking at that. Is that a little intimidating?
Definitely going to have to shoot a little bit higher to make some of those shots.
You have to put a little more arch on your shot, huh?
Yeah. And so, but I think to your point, right, JJ, I mean, borderline, that's like 3 all-stars, right? Keontae is in an incredible ascension.
Yeah.
Ace Bailey is playing out of his mind. Laurie has been an all-star. Jaren Jackson, Defensive Player of the Year, has been an all-star. Walker Kessler is certainly one of the best young centers in the game. You could even say one of the best centers in the game, period. And so, it's a very exciting team. 3 20-plus point scorers on your starting lineup, and so it's an exciting time. I wish that the Jazz had pulled the trigger on this a little bit sooner, but obviously the trade deadline, it's what triggers some of this stuff. And but excited to see what happens. And Delta Center basketball, when the Jazz is rocking, very few places compare like it. You know what I mean? When the fans are in it, Utah, Salt Lake is a basketball city, obviously it gets knocked down a lot. And especially on the James Harden destination list is definitely not on the top, if you catch my drift. And, but it's an incredible venue for when playoff basketball is happening.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about this this BYU team, of course, who's firing off at Stillwater tonight against the Pokes of Oklahoma State. That's between a couple of massive games. Of course, they were in Kansas at Allen Fieldhouse last weekend, and that was a tough one. That was a tough one to watch that first half and how it went down, and they were down by a lot very, very quickly. Richie had a career day, and it wasn't enough. We talked about how every one of these guys, especially against teams like Kansas, has to be on. Your thoughts on that game at Kansas? Now they've lost 2 in a row, and of course, those are really great teams to lose to. But at the same time, they seem like they need to find some mojo right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. You know, a few things can be true at the same time. AJ can be the number 1 prospect in the country, while Darren Peterson also outplayed him. I think that's fair. While it's also fair to say that Richie Saunders was the best player on the floor at that game. And so I think those are all fair things to say. You know, I've mentioned this a few times, but I'll reiterate. BYU, the way that the roster is right now, that's not the roster that they were hoping to have. They have 3 rotation guys that are done for the season with injuries in my goodness, Nate Pickens with Alexei Kostic and also with Brody Kozlowski. Obviously, Brody Kozlowski, you know, the star prepped from Corner Canyon, you know, just hasn't had the best luck with his health at BYU. But again, this team is missing exactly what those first 2 guys bring in, which is being able to give Robert Wright III a little bit of a break. And then Brody Kozlowski is missing a lot of that catch and shoot, spacing the floor that this team is missing, right? Now, I have been very vocal, and I'll continue to do so because that's what you guys pay me, the hundreds of millions of dollars to share my opinion.
Check is in the mail.
Right, I appreciate that. And so, but like guys like Tyler Morus and Mihailo and Kostic, they just haven't performed well. Shooting 30% or less from 3-point line, you know, that's a debacle. And the big 3 or the brig 3, as everybody's calling them, they just have a ton of help right now. And so it's difficult, right? And when you play a formidable foe like Arizona, number 1 team in the country, which, by the way, you know, we talked about that. Arizona looked like a dominant force. They looked flawless for most of that game. And then on Kansas, they just finally looked like the Kansas of old, right? The Kansas that I grew up watching, that, you know, both of you definitely remember when you think about a blue blood. And this game that they have tonight, it becomes monumental because if they some way, somehow drop that game in Clearwater, in Stillwater, oh, buddy, that is going to be a little bit of a ruckus in Cougar Town and Provo because, again, expectations are high because of the team, because of the head coach, because of the number 1 player in the country, and because of the NIL roster. And so a lot riding tonight on the line for this BYU team.
Well, they can certainly drop one in Stillwater if they don't figure out their first half issues. Now, I'm not going to ask you to solve them because, you know, if Coach can't solve them, then nobody can because he's as good as it gets. What is going on? What are you identifying or seeing that's going on to start with? Why are they having such slow starts? Why are these first halves so poor? Because then they spend the rest of the time and energy trying to get back in the game, and by then it's too late.
Yeah, so to be fair, I think if Kevin Young was able to figure that out, he should bottle it and sell it because, My goodness gracious, the way that this team just started the first half is crazy. I remember being in Madison Square Garden and going, we're down 20. Should I just head out to my reservation right now and just go sit at the bar and get some appetizers to get started with dinner? And the same thing happened with UConn. And the one thing that I will say, and the same thing happened with Arizona, right? I mean, Arizona was even worse. And Kansas. And so I think that the only team that they've played tight right now to begin the game with has been Texas Tech. And so, you know, I've always joked around and said that, you know, whatever adjustments Kevin Young make at halftime, is it possible to make before the game starts? And to this point, I don't think that it falls only on the coaches because the sense of urgency from the players, you also don't see it. Right. I'm at the Marriott Center. I'm watching these games live. I'm watching these games from the floor. And there's just not a sense of urgency from everybody. You can see Kevin gesticulating on the sideline, you know, moving their hands, motioning, come on, guys, let's go. You got to do this. You got to do that. And so to me, you know, JJ and Alex, as a former player, it falls on the players to have a little bit more a sense of urgency, because the coaches plan the game plan. And I can tell you, because I've known some of the game plans because of how close I am to the staff, they don't change a ton from what they do in the first half to the second half, aside from the sense of urgency and how hard the players are playing.
Yeah, execution obviously is one of those things you watch and you go, okay, if these guys are the comebacks have been really funny, because you're almost like setting your watch by it, because it's like, okay, they're down, but they like being down. But against teams like Arizona, it's too much. Against teams like Kansas at their place, it's too much. And I don't know. You said something awesome about that comparison of AJ and Darren Peterson, because as soon as that game was played, everyone goes, it's done, it's over. This bout has been fought. This guy's the number one guy in the country. And I like what you said about it, because, a guy like AJ can have a game where he underperforms compared to another superstar on the floor, but that's not necessarily what does it. What is the thing that you like about AJ's game that makes him such a perfect fit for that pro game?
To me, it's the ceiling and his potential. Right now, both of you have had experts on the show that know more about basketball than I know, that will forget more about basketball than I'll ever learn. And a lot of them compare AJ to Tracy McGrady, right? I actually don't like that comparison a ton. To me, I prefer the Penny Hardaway comparison, because AJ's ball handling is not super tight. What do I mean by that? When you see AJ dribbling the ball, his dribble is high. It's above his waist. And so, in my opinion, if I were an NBA, front office guy, I would draft AJ and say, my guy, you're the point guard of the future. We're going to tighten your handles. Whoever Steph Curry dribbles with, we're going to hire that guy. We're going to get you some nice handles, because AJ has the length, AJ has the touch, AJ has the court vision. Now, out of all of those things, shooting and dribbling are the least difficult to improve. And then you look at his height. I think he might end up being 6'10". He's over 6'9" right now. I think when it's all said and done, he might be 6'10 and a half, almost 6'11 with shoes on.
Wow. Still growing. Richie Saunders.
My question for you guys is, how do you stop a guard that is 6'11" with shoes on, with handles, and with the jump shot that he has?
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of Giannis, right?
Or KD when he was at his height too. That's a guy who
Giannis is a guy that could bring the ball up and down the court if he needed to, and you get some head of steam, and you're not going to stop him in the lane. So that's right. You can dominate absolutely if you're AJ and you start to tighten your hand. And if you can be ball dominant as AJ, you can just absolutely dominate in the NBA. There's no question about it. Richie Saunders was awesome at Kansas, and he made himself a lot of money because a lot of scouts were watching that game, looking at the other two guys, and the best player on the floor, as you said, was Richie Saunders with 33 points, a career high. What skills does he have that translate to the NBA? What is it about him that you think will make a good fit in the league? Because his stock is obviously rising.
Absolutely. I can say this because it's a Utah show. It reminds me, Richie reminds me of Simone Fontecchio from the Jazz, where he has the length, he has the skills to catch and shoot, to drive. I'm very close to Simone, and I don't want to say that AJ is better than Simone, because Simone was doing, he was performing at the EuroLeague level, like an all-world player. And, I agree with you. I think Richie has made himself a lot of money. I would say that I see Richie Saunders as a Duncan Robinson with better handles, more skilled, and a little bit more quickness, right? Duncan Robinson plays a lot of the 3 and the 4. I can see Richie playing the 4 in the NBA. And so, can Richie get to an Austin Reeves level? I don't think so. But I think of, that running around, shooting. Could he become something like JJ Redick? I don't think he's that sharp of a shooter to do that. Nonetheless, someone will take a flyer on him. And lo and behold, that Richie has to go to Europe and make a couple of $1 million a year. Richie reminds me a lot of J.C. Carroll, except he's a little bit more drive-minded, where he can get to the basket more, right? But again, JJ, I know you covered J.C. Carroll a lot, when he was at Utah State.
Yeah.
JC was a sniper, right?
Yep.
I don't say this about many people. JC might be able to get me on a shooting contest. I don't know if Richie is at that level, but he certainly drives more than JC does.
Hey, I got JC's number. Do we need to set
let's set up Richie. Let's get JC in here. Let's get
make this
JT
happen.
going.
JC might be listening right now, JT.
Hey,
I think we got an idea here. Let's raise some money or something.
Well, I will say this. There's not many people that live in the state of Utah that may be able to outshoot me. JC Kara is one of them. There are not many, though, but again, right, Ryan Toulson may, depending on the day and the time. Jimmer doesn't live in Utah, so, Jimmer lives in Colorado, so he's out of the question.
He doesn't qualify.
No, not allowed.
Yeah,
not allowed.
Yeah. But, everybody else, I like my chances against everybody else.
That's a heck of a list right there. There's been some incredible shooters in this state over the years.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Jonathan Tavernari, of course, joins us on the program as he does every week and gives us awesome insights. He very rarely does the self-deprecating thing, by the way, and he did it and said that, there's a lot of people out there who know more hoop than I do. But guess what? You know more about hoop than a lot of folks that we've ever talked to, and so it's always good to get the insights, and we appreciate you joining us on the program. As usual, we'll talk to you next week, JT, and have fun watching this one at Stillwater tonight, and then we'll catch up again, that Houston matchup. I didn't want to bring it up too much because you got to get what's in front of you, but we'll see how that
We'll
goes
chat
too.
about that one next week.
Dave Rose always said that, the most important game is the next one. And look, JJ, what I just got in the mail, the check. So I appreciate it, guys. I will be on the show next week because I am up to date on my payments.
Prepaid.
I appreciate you guys.
Prepaid. All right, there you go, JT. Thanks, man. We appreciate it. Jonathan Tavernari.